Welcome to Running the Table, the podcast where we run through everything on the table in the world of college basketball. Back-to-back losses for the Boilermakers, the second coming at Mackey to an incredibly hot Illinois team led by the best performance I've watched live by a freshman, home or away. But without further ado, let's run it. This one was an offensive slugfest that went down to the wire, largely the battle between two elite point guards trying to will their team to victory. In the end, a nuclear freshman performance, unlike we've ever seen in Mackey Arena history, plus timely buckets from the supporting cast pulled the Fighting Illini ahead of the Boilermakers, 88 to 82. I got some comments about this style of video, so we're going to stick to the more open-ended discussion side of things. But we're going to start with the Illinois side, namely Keaton Wagler. He had 46 points, which is a Mackey record for an opposing player on 13 of 17 shooting, 9 for 11 from 3, 11 for 13 from the free throw line, 4 assists, and 3 turnovers. I mean, there's not much to say other than the shot making was incredible. His confidence for being a freshman was well beyond his years. He looked incredible in this game. He was really difficult to throw off of his game, no matter what we threw at him. There was definitely a couple times though that we lost him in the scrum of offensive rebounds or in the rotations as our defense kind of crumbled and we had to, move in different directions. But there's just not much you can say other than he was fantastic. But he absolutely did capitalize off of Purdue's switching for most of the game. We went with a little bit of a different strategy for, working the ball screens based on our performance at UCLA, trying to change some things up. Most of the game, we switched everything that we could, which led to a lot of Wagler going on Clough one-on-one, especially in the first half. And quite honestly, I don't think we could ask Clough to do much more than he did. He held his own. There was definitely a couple of times where, his shots that fell literally were just threes over Clough's head. Clough caused a turnover on the sideline on one of them where he was, just applying pressure off of, I believe it was a kick out or a dribble out to the sideline. And overall, he did a good job staying in front of him, which is obviously the main thing that you get concerned about with a center being switched on to a point guard or just any type of guard that is really good at ball handling and getting to the basket. He did a good job overall. I really can't complain anything about that. But beside that, the best defense that we had on Wagler was when we had like Jacobson and Benter in there, and Benter was the one that was able to be the ball screen defender. There was a couple of possessions kind of throughout the game where Benter we were able to keep Jacobson under the basket or on the wing because of course Illinois wants to stretch you in every way imaginable with all of their front court players that can shoot. But having Benter out there, we were able to get him switched on a couple of times that really did a much better job of just kind of putting him in places where he didn't want to go. Even TKR actually did a pretty good job on a couple of possessions that he got switched onto Wagler. But at the end of the day, sometimes great offense beats good defense. And in a lot of possessions, that really is what happened because Wagler just was that good. But we tried an adjustment late in the second half, and unfortunately, it just did not work for a multitude of reasons. In fact, it worked significantly worse than a lot of the game of letting him take tough contested shots or, just letting the defense try to work the ball out of Wagler's hands in the one-on-one. We tried a high hedge, or in some cases, a miscommunicated switch, where the rotations just did not occur. They did not happen. It led to a couple of open threes, some on the wing. There was a couple where Clough made an effort to get back, so they were lightly contested, but too open for, just what the game was down the stretch. And it led to a lot of made baskets towards the end where Purdue was trying their best to fight their way back in those last couple of minutes. But their offense was just too good at the end there. There was even one of the situations that I remember where Clough, in an attempt to do the high hedge and then get back to a Visage, actually ended up sort of blocking CJ from making an attempt to cut Wagler off on his drive. He just kind of had to coast with him because he couldn't beat him with that first step. And that was one of the possessions late where Wagler ended up getting that basket in the lane that really put the nail in the coffin in the last couple of possessions. But there was just too many miscommunications there. We tried to make the adjustments, which I appreciate from a coaching staff side, not just letting us, die on the same hill. Unfortunately, this time the adjustments just didn't quite work. And some of that is, once again, better offense. But one of the things that we definitely could control is moving on to the rebounding side of things. We got absolutely bullied on the boards. The rebounding battle ended up at 33 to 19. 13 to 3 on the offensive end, which is brutal, and 20 to 16 on the defensive end. I get that Illinois is a great rebounding team, one of the best rebounding teams in the country because of their not only their size across their lineups. There are a fair amount of teams out there that have size across a lot of their positions, but their aggression on the boards is almost bar none. And they showed it in this game. They attacked the glass time and time again. I think the biggest issue that I have with it was the fact that once again, Clough and Jacobson combined for 6 rebounds in 40 minutes. When you're facing a team that is this good of a rebounding team, that is this tall across the board, your big men have to produce. And those two just did not really produce. Trey Kaufman-Renn, 2 rebounds in his 26 minutes. It's just not going to cut it, and it didn't cut it. We needed those guys to step up more than they did. We needed them to box out harder and be more aggressive going after the boards. And quite frankly, unfortunately, being aggressive on much of anything is not Jacobson's specialty, as we've been seeing lately. But analyzing both sides of the glass, on the offensive glass, we don't crash as a team. And that's part of the reason why against Big Ten opponents, we have not been the same incredible rebounding team as we were in the non-conference. Obviously, some of those games against mid-major teams or just non-power conference teams, whatever you want to call it, kind of boosted our numbers there. But it's just one of those things that it's more of a strategy thing than an aggression thing. Clough still attacks the basket incredibly hard. In this game, he was attacking as much as he possibly could. He was all 3 of our offensive rebounds were all him. But he gets beat up down there, especially against a team this big. Illinois' size just overwhelmed him, and we time and time again did not have enough guys crashing the glass around it. We have this sort of strategy where it seems like we try to send one of the wing players to the free throw line on a shot attempt to maybe get an offensive rebound if it falls back there. I know we kind of have the strategy where we send one back always, plus the shooter. So that kind of ends up being 2 that are out of the play. But we should be attacking the glass with those other 3 every time. Sometimes when Benter was shooting, then it's like, okay, you now have a 4-man shooting and you've eliminated one of your 2 guys that are sort of auto crashing. Or some of the other scenarios where we just had wing players that just kind of sat out on the wings and watched. And against a team like this, that's just not going to cut it. So it's one of those things that maybe poor habits, maybe just spur of the moment, but those are the things that you have to make instinctual and you have to make part of your game plan, game in and game out, no matter what team you are facing. So that way, when you face a team like this, you don't have to think about it. You don't have to take another focus point of, oh, hey, you need to crash the glass now more than ever. When realistically, that should be the case. You have to identify, that kind of situation. Against a team like this especially. But for the defensive glass as well, we just did not box out well as a team, especially with them shooting as many threes as they did. We relied too much on long rebounds just falling to our guards, and quite frankly, that worked for us more in the first half kind of accidentally. There was just a lot of situations where a long rebound bounced off the head, arm, shoulder of an Illinois attacker, and it ended up in a long rebound that we were able to corral, or just one of those situations where those long rebounds off of threes fell into Braden's hands, into CJ's hands. A couple of them fell into Fletcher's hands, and we were able to get the break start in there, and that was a big reason why we were able to build and extend our lead as much as we did in the first half. I believe it was up to 10 at one point in the first half before a couple of timely buckets there in the last couple of minutes of the first half brought it back to the 4-point lead that Purdue had at halftime. But there's just too many times where we're not being aggressive enough with it. And against a team like Illinois, I was surprised because I know that has to be something that this coaching staff talked about. They know full well everything that Illinois is capable of, their strengths, what they like to do. They like to shoot threes and they like to attack the glass. And they did that and they succeeded at that. Quite frankly, they didn't even succeed that highly on the shooting aspect of things outside of Wagler, but they made up for it on the offensive glass. Moving on to turnovers, though, this was one where it looks great on paper. It was a 10-3 turnover battle in favor of Illinois with a 10 or in favor of Purdue because we forced the 10 turnovers. But regardless, 10 Illinois turnovers to Purdue's 3. That's great. But with everything that we just talked about on the rebounding battle, we completely eliminated whatever advantage that we had on the overall possession battle by letting them out rebound us by 10. They out rebounded us on 10 on the offensive side, just offensive rebounds, and we out turnovered them or held on to the ball for 7 more possessions than them. Overall, if you look at the actual shots, they were 27 for 56, 48% from the floor. We were 33 of 58, so we had 2 more total field goals. So it just proves that just how important that rebounding aspect of thing is, but specifically on the turnover side, Illinois is not a super high pressure turnover generating defense, and Purdue was able to take advantage of that. There was only the couple of slip ups there, 1 turnover from Braden, 1 turnover from Fletch, and 1 from Omer Meyer there throughout the game, whereas we were able to cause some havoc throughout the game when Wagler wasn't just shooting shots straight over us. So that was a really great aspect of this. I was happy to see that we were able to turn them over, but you have to combine these aspects of the game, and that was one where we pretty much ended up net even, if anything, still leaning closer in their direction when it came to the actual possessions. And the fact that they were able to generate so many more possessions or so many more shot attempts with their offensive rebounding. But moving to the foul side of things, it was relatively close when it comes to the overall number of fouls. It was 17 fouls for Purdue and 14 for Illinois, which is surprising in the first place because Purdue is not a high fouling team. And this has been the case all season long. You had 4 fouls for Trey, 4 fouls for Benter. That definitely caused some weird things throughout the game. Both of our power forwards kind of tagging in and out throughout the second half with dealing with that foul trouble. 3 for CJ, 3 for Jakari, 2 for Clough. And those 2 for Clough were particularly tough fouls. But we'll get into that in a little bit. Just in general, the refereeing was a little bit unpredictable on both sides. There were some weird fouls called. I'm trying to think of some of the examples that I remember. There were some of the ticky-tack fouls on the defensive end that I think sent Illinois to the line a couple more times than maybe they should have, especially in the second half. I mean, Wagler going to the line 13 times is surprising to me, given the fact that out of his 17 shots, 11 of them were from 3. He didn't go inside all that much, especially not with the intention of attacking the basket. If anything, he attacked more of the mid-range. But that all of those, kind of weird calls, there were definitely some weird ones that didn't go called. Like Benter on the defensive end, at least once tried to take what seemingly felt like a very clear charge. Not only did it not get called a block, it just didn't get called anything. And there was a couple more instances like that throughout the game where it's just you kind of shrug your shoulders and widen your eyes and say, okay. But for Illinois specifically, part of the reason why the free throw battle went 22 free throws for Illinois and only 11 for Purdue is Illinois' fouls. They had quite a few of your like offensive player control fouls. So even if Purdue was in the bonus at the time of some of those fouls, we don't get free throws from them. Versus Purdue, a lot of those fouls came on the defensive end. Some of them were, a couple of them were like those offensive rebound over the back, just general push off fouls that were really tough calls in this game, given the general physicality and what, they were allowing guys to get away with going for rebounds on some possessions versus others. But for Purdue in general, we just got sloppy. I mentioned Clough's two fouls, and because they were two very specific fouls. One, that hook and hold flagrant. I believe that was in the first. Yes, that was in the first half, and could have gone both ways. I kind of understand why it was called a flagrant. He did have a little bit of that. I don't know if there was necessarily quite the hook, but there was a fair amount of the hold. So be that as it may, his second one I remember clearly was a very sloppy play. It was on the defensive end in the second half where he was going to up to guard the ball screen and he just laid out his guy that was going to set the screen. He was going to set it and just kind of ran him over, shoved him, clear foul. And I can't remember if that one sent him to the line or not, but regardless, it just adds on. And for him, I think it was one of those where he was just getting beat up all game where he didn't quite have the body control left in him on some of these possessions to be fleet-footed and avoid the screener. But it's one of those where at least the shove just can't happen. But the combination of that sloppiness and some of those rather favorable calls for Illinois put them to the line and bailed them out of making offensive plays a lot, especially in the second half. And it bailed them out for a good portion of that second half. And then you run that into those last like 2 or 3 minutes where Illinois just made shot after shot after shot. Looking at the actual, play sheet there, starting at, I mean, you want to talk about going all the way back to the 3:50 minute mark, or no, 3.5 minute mark. You've got an Ivisic three, followed up with a Jake Davis three, followed up with a Mirkovic three, followed up with a fourth Ivisic three. Over the course of those last 3.5 minutes, we just flat out gave them four straight threes. Now, granted, they made them open too. They weren't just like they were hot making shots. That was where we kind of had the ball screen mishaps, the rotations that just didn't work. And that was just a brutal way for us to try to claw back. And we were still right in it towards the end. You had the game or the part of the game where 15 seconds left, Braden gets fouled on a three, and we are down 84-80 with three shots. You can make it a 1 point game, but Braden misses one of those three free throws. He misses the first free throw, and that's just brutal because now even with the two free throws, we were toast. It was a 4 point game. So just a lot of things at the end of that game there that just didn't quite go our way. This ever so slight mistakes that become absolutely enormous mistakes. I don't want to blame Braden for missing a free throw, but definitely a crucial play in that game that just fell short for us. But since I got looking into it the last game, I want to get back to talking about some of these advanced analytics, not just looking at box plus minus like we did the last game or the last recap, but just some of the more overall things. Looking at these advanced box score stats coming from sportsreference.com. First of all, you can see that Braden was incredible, obviously. A near 25 box plus minus. His assist percentage being like 62% is just generally pretty crazy. But behind Braden, you see Trey Kaufman-Renn to 10.9 box plus minus. So he was pretty solid in his, rather limited attempts. He doesn't feel like he's quite as aggressive as he was. And maybe it's because he's dealing with more of these double teams. Maybe it's because we're not running nearly as many of those straight to TKR type plays, but he just doesn't feel quite as aggressive as he used to be. And off the bench, Omer was great as the only other dangerous 3-point shooter besides Braden. We couldn't get anything valuable from Fletch from three. He was 1 for 3. CJ was cold from deep. He was 0 for 3, and Benter off the bench struggled as well, 1 for 4. So I was very happy to see that Omer is starting to find his three again. Hopefully he can continue that moving forward, but definitely needed some more support from some of those other guys. But namely, you talk about the starting lineup. You see -5.3 and -3.8 for Cox and Lawyer respectively in the box plus minus, and that's just tough. You needed more production from those key supporting roles in the starting lineup, and unfortunately, I kind of have to call Lawyer a supporting role at the moment. But his support is shooting, and once again, I think he hit his first one, and again didn't hit since he missed his other two, and Cox just had some open looks and didn't knock him down. But looking into some more of these specific stats, I want to talk about TRB percentage, total rebound percentage. That is defined as an estimate of the percentage of available rebounds a player grabbed while they were on the floor. And this one, combined with offensive rebound percentage, I think just kind of put this game in a nutshell. Purdue, for total rebound percentage, you can see at 37.3%. I don't necessarily know what a good total rebound percentage is, but 37.3, that's not good because that leaves Illinois' total rebound percentage to 62.7. Those two add up to that 100% of the total rebounds. That just proves it's a kind of a percentage way of showing the overall rebounding battle. But namely, when you bring in offensive rebound percentage, Purdue with just 13% of an offensive rebound, which I'll get back to the fact that offensive rebound percentage is an estimate of the percentage of available offensive rebounds a player grabbed while they were on the floor, or in this case, a team. Purdue 13% to Illinois' 42.9%. There's no way you can call any aspect of rebounding a good game when your opponent is getting close to 50% of the available offensive rebounds. That's just bad. And again, I get that they're a fantastic rebounding team, but to beat the best teams, you have to eliminate or at least partially eliminate some of their strengths. And we did not do that in this one. And that's just another example of, ways that we just struggled to take them out of their game. But all in all, coming up next, the next iteration of the best rivalry in college basketball, no bias whatsoever, as Purdue will look for the ultimate redemption heading down to Mackey South to take on the Indiana Hoosiers on Tuesday night. We need this win now more than ever, and hopefully we can catch them resting on their laurels and the high of their most recent championship win, as much as I hate to say it. But hopefully we can use that as fuel for an absolute beatdown of the Hoosiers. But that's all I've got for today. This next game has huge ramifications beyond avoiding a 3-game losing streak. So I'll have plenty to talk about regardless of the outcome. And let me know your thoughts about this game and how it turned out in the comments below. But if you want more from us, like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, I'm out.